Intel is giving up its own chip production, but there is still one last chance. What happened? Let's go back a few years and look at what exactly has happened up to the present day. The year is 2019, Intel is at the top, everything is running smoothly and the new roadmap is presented with pride. According to the plan, the next step will be the production of 7nm chips. That sounds reasonable and the goals should be achievable. TSMC has also presented a similar roadmap. 2020 Intel CPUs in 10nm are reaching their physical limits in terms of performance and efficiency. The chips are getting hotter, which is completely normal in the last expansion stage. Next year, the 7nm generation will eliminate this problem. A major setback for Intel in 2021, there are problems in 7nm production. Intel does not want to disclose the exact cause. Allegedly, this problem will be solved quickly and 7nm CPUs will be released next year. Now everyone is aware that Intel has massive problems. The new A cores that Intel is introducing should compensate for the performance deficit compared to AMD CPUs. AMD clearly overtakes Intel in performance and efficiency for the first time. The 11th Intel generation clearly exceeds the efficiency with the use of the new E-cores. Many customers are dissatisfied with the poor performance and heat development. In addition, various applications refuse to operate with the E-cores. Intel customers have to switch to Windows 11, but some applications still do not run. Microsoft and the software manufacturers are trying to solve the problems caused by Intel CPUs with various patches. 2022 Intel cannot deliver the promised 7nm CPUs, but Intel promises to deliver the 7nm CPUs again next year. This year, Intel wants to prove that the E-cores are not just a stopgap solution, but can also deliver more performance. Intel's 12th generation has received a performance boost by overclocking the E-cores. Unfortunately, this leads to even greater inefficiency. Customers are struggling with excessive CPU temperatures. Without water cooling, an Intel CPU can no longer be used. For PC gamers, this means another major cost factor, a larger power supply unit, water cooling, and a high electricity bill. In 2022, the filtering and the display of the lithography were also removed from the Intel website. No one should be made aware of this and see the catastrophic state and humiliation of Intel. 2023 Intel's 13th CPU generation is an absolute disgrace for Intel. The total failure can no longer be justified or explained. The rapid decline is inevitable. The only thing that could save Intel now is the year 2024 with a new lithography. Intel is making further promises for 2024, but its credibility is gone. Intel's CPUs have long exceeded the physical limit of 10nm lithography. Intel now needs 3.89 times as much power as an AMD CPU to keep up with performance. This is not only a shock for many connoisseurs, it will certainly become a huge problem for Intel. The decline is now really picking up speed. It all depends on the year 2024. 2024 Intel's 14th CPU generation. Total failure is now more than a reality. Customer complaints about the 13th CPU generation are also shooting through the roof. Instability, burnt CPUs, massive overheating. In addition, there are masses of warranty claims that cost real money. This year's CPU generation, which was again manufactured in 10nm, also shows the end of in-house chip production. The point for explanations has more than just been passed. Many experts are already writing Intel off. The CPU benchmarks with the TDP actually say it all. Many server farm operators and companies are now finally pulling the plug on Intel. Nobody is willing to pay massive power and cooling costs for Intel's outdated CPUs any longer. Intel's revenues will not only fall away, they will collapse, which is extreme and bad for business if the older CPU is faster than the new one. The Intel Core i9-14900F reflects the perfect state of Intel, but this CPU benchmark also shows something else. The extremely efficient AMD CPU with just 55 watts, as well as how much more power and efficiency AMD also achieves when the physical limit is exceeded. However, it must be mentioned here that AMD is entering the race with far fewer cores. What is not clear from this is whether Intel has a better CPU design than AMD. This can only be seen when Intel launches a CPU with a 5nm or deeper lithography. February 21st, Intel announces a new roadmap without a date, and with good reason. Intel's credibility is gone. Intel now asserts that all its energy will be focused on Intel 3 lithography. All other developments are being put on hold. After the Intel 3, the Intel 20A and the 18A lithography are to follow. The experts have long since given up speculating about this. Intel has broken its word too often. February 23rd, Intel is at the end and must now take a desperate step to ensure its own survival. Even if this step is a loss of face, it is the logical consequence. Survive or die. TSCM will manufacture the next Intel desktop CPU using 3nm lithography. This could be a liberating blow for Intel. At the same time, however, Intel is putting itself under even greater pressure. Intel only has experience in 10nm CPU design. This CPU generation will show whether Intel can still design CPUs or will see the abyss even faster. Everything is at stake for Intel. The old Intel roadmap with the updated information. Intel is back on track with TSCM. At least Intel is keeping its word this time and is launching a 3nm desktop CPU on the market. We will soon find out how things turn out for Intel. Intel's new roadmap has now also been given its first dates. The question now is whether Intel will be able to produce its own 20A CPUs by the end of 2025 or not. For comparison, the TSCM roadmap, which has been 100% fulfilled so far, in contrast to the Intel roadmap and announcements. However, everyone should be aware that if Intel were to fail in the future, this would not only be dramatic for Intel and its shareholders, the rest of the world would also be affected by massively higher CPU prices because AMD would be rid of competition. It will be a few years before the next competitor from China can catch up. The new x86 CPU from Lunsen is making huge progress every year, but the Chinese join the CPU race much later. The current Lunsen CPU with the name 3B7000 is at the level of the 10th Intel generation. Remarkably, the Chinese manufacture the CPU themselves. On June 4th, Intel announces like a mentally ill person that the new desktop CPUs will be manufactured in the 20A process for the year 2024. Apparently someone did not receive the memo at Intel headquarters that Intel has already announced that the next desktop CPUs will be manufactured in the 3nm process by TSCM. Intel's incompetence has now been followed by excessive stupidity, if this doesn't end badly. June 11th, Intel stops the construction of the Intel factory in Israel. Nobody talks about the war. Everyone assumes that Intel will have massive financial problems. The failures of recent years have gone on for too long. June 18th, yet another weak media sense from Intel. Now it is claimed that the next desktop CPU generation will be manufactured using the Intel 3 process. What now? Exactly 14 days ago it was said that the CPUs will be manufactured using the 20A process. Stupidity, confusion, and pure chaos. Maybe it's better for the world if Intel pulls the plug after all. June 19th, Intel has no solution to the CPU problems of the 13th and 14th generation. Actually, everyone knows it, there is no solution. Too much power on the CPU, or in other words, excessive overclocking. There is only one solution. The power consumption must be reduced and the CPU must be clocked down. This means that the CPUs lose a lot of performance, but that is the reality. This is also called physics. June 17th, who would have thought that Intel server CPUs would also have massive problems? Anyone who now says that nobody could have guessed this is a liar or has no idea about CPUs and their physics. Anyone who has bought Intel CPUs in the last 4 years has only themselves to blame. If you have no idea about your job, you should better look around for a new one. July 22nd, Intel urgently needs money and wants to generate the last money with the old 10nm lithography. The CPUs are massively throttled due to the limited wattage consumption and do without E-cores. In other words, these CPUs are over 4 years old. The question is, however, which PC manufacturer is stupid enough to offer these CPUs to its customers? HP, Dell, or Lenovo? I don't know. Here is an overview of the obsolete CPUs, without prices of course. If Intel really wants to sell these CPUs, there is only one solution. Give them away, or not produce any CPUs at all. Or would you like to have such a CPU? August 2nd, Intel shares in free fall. It took a long time, too long, for investors to realize the extent of the catastrophe. This shows once again the stupidity of the rich class. Born stupid and learned nothing but filthy rich. This is followed by the mass dismissal of 19,000 employees. September 5th, Intel now announces what everyone has known for a long time except Intel itself. The Intel 3 and Intel 20A lithography will be abandoned. The last energy Intel still has will now be concentrated on lithography 18A. On paper, this sounds reasonable. However, it has to be said, from 10 nanometer directly to 18A without experience in manufacturing and chip design is a bit, let's say, fantasyful. I am curious to see how this fantasy will end. Now we have the new Intel roadmap with real dates from Intel. Well, we'll see what 2026 will really bring. But one thing is clear, 2026 is Intel's last chance for its own CPU production. Now it's all or nothing. September 4th, Broadcom was already allowed to test a first prototype of Intel 18A. Unfortunately, the Intel 18A lithography is far from being ready for the market and mass production should not even be considered. As always, Intel emphasized that this is normal as an early stage and there is nothing to worry about. Hello Intel, we're not worried, it's your CPU. We can live with AMD CPUs without any problems. Even in the German media, which, as always, are far too late and can't or don't want to see the situation, they have now even realized that the 18A lithography is Intel's last chance. September 10th, the sales start of the new Intel desktop CPUs is known. Sales start on October 24th. The question is, who will buy an Intel CPU? Theoretically, there should be no problem. The CPUs are made in 3 nanometer by TSCM. They should be very fast, consume much less power, and certainly no longer overheat. Intel can now prove what their 65-watt CPUs can do. Mathematically, these CPUs should be faster than AMD's. However, it all depends on Intel's first 3 nanometer CPU design. It would also be important to know whether the TDP specifications are now fixed or whether they will secretly shoot up again to over 120 watts or even higher. In any case, it will be very interesting. The first price details for the new Intel CPUs, which were discovered on a British online store. The prices are roughly on a par with those of AMD. We'll see if the new Intel CPUs are worth the money. September 16th, Intel loses again to AMD, the PlayStation 6 deal. This is understandable. Intel's performance has been a disaster in recent years. In addition, Sony has no desire to pay a lot of money for an exorbitant cooling system in order to be able to use Intel CPUs. September 17th, Intel stops the construction of the planned chip factories in Germany and Poland. It may well be, should Intel master 18A lithography, that the factories will be built in Magdeburg in Germany and Wrocław in Poland. It is unclear when these factories will start operating. However, it should be around 2026, if at all. September 17th, Intel goes all in. Very expensive marketing for Intel. This deal will kill Intel. If Intel can't deliver, the contract with Amazon is void and damages must be paid. Was this really a smart idea to put all your eggs in one basket? September 20th, Qualcomm has tasted blood. According to rumors, Qualcomm wants to take over Intel. Sounds good, but what does Qualcomm want to do with Intel? Is this really a good idea? Intel has to prove itself on October 24. Will the 3 nanometer CPU design work or not? On paper, AMD should be overtaken in terms of performance and efficiency. 2026 is Intel's last chance to manufacture its own chips. If this goal is not achieved, it will be the end for Intel in its current form. Whether Intel will continue to design CPUs depends very much on the new CPUs that will be launched on October 24. Hot tip: before anyone buys a new Intel CPU, they should wait until the first real test results from customers are available. Thanks for watching and see you next time.